Hey guys, Curtis with Wander with the Workmans here, and it was a good run, but it had to come to an end eventually. After almost 6 years and at least 10,000 miles on this particular truck, I finally got pulled over, and here's why. So Havla and I were on our way the other night to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico to meet up with Giffords on the Go for dinner, and my rearview mirror lit up. The blue and red flashers were telling me I needed to pull over to the side. Ultimately, what it was that it was an equipment issue. In New Mexico, license plate illuminators are an issue. They're required. In the state of Idaho, it's a little bit different depending upon the vintage of your vehicle. They may be mandated, they may be suggested, and they may not be required at all. But in New Mexico, it was an issue, and it was something this deputy felt he must address with us. Now, I'd like to say from the outset, this deputy, was professional. He was efficient and appropriately friendly. It was actually a pleasant experience to be pulled over by this deputy. So the people of Sierra County, New Mexico, and the sheriff's office in particular should be very proud. He was an excellent ambassador of his community, as well as being a very effective and professional law enforcement officer. What ended up happening was he ended up giving us just the please see to it or get it fixed as appropriate to your state laws warning. And that was about it, other than we did fumble in a couple of places. So here's my few tips for how to effectively deal with being pulled over. Now, let's attend to the legal niceties here. I am not, nor have I ever been, nor will I ever be a lawyer. I'm not a law enforcement agency. I've received no training in that area. I am not making any promises whatsoever that this will get you out of a ticket or anything of that nature. There is no promise, no guarantee here. One other qualification for this is that these are also not tips that I have made up myself. In my sticks and bricks existence, I served on the city council of our hometown, and that gave me the opportunity to deal with, very closely in fact, with our police chief and our law enforcement officers. And these are tips that they have given to me, that those particular officers have given to me. So at least some law enforcement officers out there feel that these are effective things to make that moment a little less nerve-wracking. That's the point. This is to make that moment a little bit smoother for both you and the officer or deputy. So tip number one is this: no sudden movements. Officer approached our vehicle, gave us the standard question, do you know why I pulled you over this evening? I said no, and he explained that the license plate illuminators on the back of our truck were either non-existent or weren't working. And in our case, they don't exist. But the minute he said this, Havla got really excited. She jumps down, she reaches down, she undoes her seatbelt, she reaches for the door handle, and this makes the officer really super nervous. He's like, whoa, don't. So tip number one, no sudden movements. Just be calm. Don't move quickly. Nice and easy. After that part of the interaction, he asks us the other standard question you're probably going to get, and that is license, registration, insurance. Please. Now, in the state of Idaho, we are required to keep the registration for our trailer in the glove box of our towing vehicle. The logic being that most times when your registration needs to be inspected by someone, it's when that trailer is being towed and interacting with other traffic. And so we keep it in our glove box. Other states may differ, but we ended up handing him the insurance card, my license, and the registration for the trailer, which was about 12 miles back the other direction. Luckily, he was able to sort it all out, dealing with dispatch and that type of thing, and understand what we had done. But when he came back to the cab of the truck, I was like, we gave you the wrong registration, huh? He's like, yeah, but I got it figured out. So here's my tip. Find a way to effectively organize your documentation, or be able to identify it quickly. Study it, understand which registration corresponds to which vehicle. Another thing you might do is maybe put the registration of the truck in the front of your owner's manual, and the trailer registration in the back of the owner's manual, something like that. Now, some states may allow you to mark or highlight some way of identifying that quickly, but other states might get really uptight about defacing an official document. Which brings me to my third tip. Know the laws and be compliant with the laws of the state your vehicle is registered in. That's what's going to dictate in terms of registration, documentation, and equipment. And this was something this deputy recognized at the end of the traffic stop, and that's why he gave us a please see to it kind of warning, was that Idaho's laws may and are different than New Mexico laws. So again, just know the laws of the state that you register your vehicle in. Whatever state is listed on your license plate is the one that's important. Now, in terms of other tips, and these are specifically the tips that were given to me by law enforcement officers, there's some things you can do to make these moments a little more comfortable, and that's really the purpose of these tips. The first purpose, or the first goal, is to make you, your passengers, and the officer or deputy as comfortable as possible with the interaction. The second goal is to create a way to effectively and clearly communicate when dealing with law enforcement in a traffic stop situation. Once you have been lit up and it's time for you to pull off the side of the road, make sure you find a place to pull off safely. That is the key there, is to pull off safely. Officers understand that that may take a little bit, don't abuse the privilege, but may take a little bit to find an appropriate pull-off location. And so don't jerk your wheel, don't do anything crazy, look for a safe place to pull over and get out of traffic safely. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to roll down both windows, both the passenger and the driver side windows. The reason for this is different law enforcement agencies in different states and different localities have different policies on which side the officer should approach the vehicle on. Now, some places it's mandated that officers approach from the passenger side. Other places leave it to officer discretion. So know that you probably will get approached 50-50, maybe? I don't know. But there is a chance that you'll be approached on differing sides of the vehicle. So be receptive to that by rolling down both windows so that you're ready to have a conversation with that officer when they approach. Also on that note, unless there's some major weather consideration like you're in Minneapolis and it's negative 5,000 degrees, do not just roll your window down this far and try and have that conversation. That's just plain rude, and it doesn't help make for effective communication. Roll your windows all the way down. Also, turn off your radio, and in our case, I turn off the truck. There may be some psychology here about your willingness, your signaling that you're not going to flee or evade or something like that, but the truth of the matter is it's a diesel engine and it's loud. And so I turn off our engine just to facilitate that communication, because nobody wants to be shouting over engine noise. It just makes for an unpleasant conversation. So turn off your engine. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what to do if you're being pulled over at night. This is a specific nighttime step. Once you've come to a stop, you've got your windows down, the radio and the engine are off so that you can have a conversation. Slowly reach up and turn on, in this case, turn off, there we go, turn on your overhead light. This illuminates the cabin of your vehicle and gives the officer an opportunity to feel a little bit more comfortable because they can see what's inside the vehicle more effectively. Now, if you're being pulled over in the daytime or you've done the reach up and turn on your dome light, the next thing you want to do, just place your hands on top of the steering wheel. Keep them in full view, no sudden movements, please. And the reason for this is just to make the officer feel a little bit more comfortable that you're not reaching someplace weird, you're not doing anything. And so put your hands on top of the wheel and leave them there. Do not go document diving. Not yet. Okay? Just leave them there. Passengers, put your hands in your laps, get them out of your pockets. Just put them up gently in your lap. Don't move them until the officer asks you for your license and your registration. And again, at this moment, don't go document diving. Just calmly explain to the officer where your documents are at. In our case, when he asked us, I simply explained to him that my license was in my wallet, which was in my back pocket, and the documents were in the glove box, and my wife would be looking for those. Only once he had said okay and acknowledged that statement, Then I reached for my license. Havilah began looking for the documents, even if we didn't find the right ones. All of these things, again, are not guaranteeing, not promising you're going to get out of any kind of fine or ticket or anything like that. All it is just making that as pleasant as possible and as nice as possible, because that calms you down, that calms the officer down, it makes things go more effectively. And that's all these tips are there for, is to calm things down in that moment. The last tip I have for you is very, very important. Don't argue with the officer. That's not their place in the system. Their place in the system is to recognize safety concerns and violations at the best of their knowledge and the best of their training. Now, if you feel you're absolutely in the right, that's not the guy to have the conversation with. That's not the lady to talk to about that. They're doing the best job that they can with the best understanding that they have. If you have a differing opinion, that conversation is to be had in the courtroom, in front of a judge. So don't argue with the officers. They really are doing the best that they possibly can, with the best understanding that they possibly can get. We're all human. Everybody understands that, but know where you're at in that chain, where you're at in that system. And arguing voraciously with an officer is not the place to have that conversation. Please just don't do it. Take it to the next step if you feel you're right. And you may be, but just know that that argument needs to be made in the courtroom. So there you have it, some tips on making that moment in time just a little less nerve-wracking. If you guys have any tips you'd like to share on how to make that moment of being pulled over just a little more pleasant, be sure to leave them in the comments below. If you'd like to keep up with us on a more spontaneous basis, we are on Instagram. We are Wander with the Workmans on Instagram, so give us a follow there. And in the meantime, you guys, we'll catch you down the road.